Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another EU book review. And we're finally at that part of the expanded universe journey where we're going to start talking about the heroes of the original trilogy. And we're going to start that journey with A.C. Crispin's Han Solo trilogy, Book 1, The Paradise Snare. The first book that's going to talk about Han Solo. Now, A.C. Crispin was a pretty big author in the science fiction community back in the 80s and 90s. She wrote a lot of books, novels in the Star Wars universe, as well as a lot of short stories. She also wrote a lot of books in the Star Trek universe. She wrote a lot of her own original novels. And she also wrote some novelizations, including the novelization of one of my all-time favorite science fiction television series, V, from the 80s. So A.C. Crispin was very well known in the science fiction community, and it was given to her to write the trilogy to talk about Han Solo's life before we meet him in A New Hope. And she does a pretty thorough and a pretty good job of that challenge. The first book covers the first 19 to 20 years of Han's life, where he came from, up through the first 2 decades. The second book talks about the middle portion of his life, where he meets Lando, where he meets Chewbacca. And then the last portion of the last book in the trilogy talks about the last portion, sort of his life, the years right before that fateful encounter with Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker in Mos Eisley. So it covers a good 3 decades of Han's life, because Han was in his early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, when we meet him finally in A New Hope. So let's talk about the first book. Let's talk about The Paradise Snare. And I do love the cover of these original covers of these expanding universe books. This is a really good cover right here. And it covers all of the main players in the book. So basically, Han's story is a very sad one, at least for the first 20 years of his life. He was an orphan. He was an orphan on Corellia. He doesn't know his parents. He was, I don't want to say abducted, but he was picked up at the age of 2 or 3 by a slaver named Garrus Shrike. Garrus Shrike had a ship called the Trader's Luck, and he would go around the galaxy, around different planets, and he would pick up street urchins, and he would kidnap kids, and he would recruit slaves, and then he would use them to run scams. So he would use them to beg for money on planets. He would use them to scam rich people on planets, and that's what Han did for the good, probably the first 15 years of his life. He ran scams for Garrus Shrike to make money for Shrike. He was a beggar. He was a thief. He was scamming rich peoples. He was running all kinds of fraudulent scams all over the place. He had multiple identities. He was running under different names. Everybody on that ship, that slave ship, was doing the same thing. They were all running scams to make this guy money, to make Shrike money from planet to planet. And the only friend that Han had in the early years of his life was Dulana, a Wookiee. She worked on the ship. She was the ship's cook, and she befriended Han. She basically became a mother-type figure to Han, the only person that looked out for him, the only person that supported him. So right off the bat, from the earliest of ages, Han already has cultivated a good relationship with Wookiees. Because his first bodyguard or his first family member, his first mother figure was a Wookiee. And she was the only one who looked out for him his entire time while he was on this ship. And the only thing that Han wanted to do was he wanted to escape so he could go sign up for the Imperial Academy. He wanted to be a pilot. He wanted to be a pilot in the Navy. And he knew how to fly ships. He knew how to race swoops. He knew how to do all those things. And he also knew how to do all the ne'er-do-well things, right? He knew how to make contacts. He knew how to steal from people. He knew how to do all that underground stuff. But that's what Han really wanted to do. He really wanted to get away, start his own life, and he really wanted to become a Navy pilot. And so finally, at the age of 19, he does that. He makes an escape from Shrike's ship. In the process of him escaping, Dulana is killed. So his only friend is murdered, helping him escape. And so he does. He gets off he gets off the ship, and his plan is to go to a planet called Elysia. And it's sort of a religious planet where people can go and become pilgrims. He wants to go to Elysia. He wants to sort of re-identify who he is. He wants to make some money so that he can eventually go apply at the academy. And so he gets to Elysia. And he starts working for the Talan Datil. The Talan Datil, which are they're a subspecies of Hutt. They're like the Hutt's distant cousins. They all come from Hutts, and the Talan Datil all come from the same planet. But they're like cousins to each other. And so he quickly finds out that this is not a religious commune on this planet. This is actually a spice factory. So what the Hutts and the Talan Datil are doing on Elysia is they're bringing in spice from all over the galaxy, and they've got a factory, and they're refining the spice, and they're using the religious pilgrims as slave laborers. So the pilgrims on this planet are working in spice factories, glitter stim factories, and all the other spices to refine it as part of their religious upbringing. And Han quickly finds this out. He quickly realizes that this entire planet is a scam run by the Hutts. And that's what he sort of does for a while. He does it for about 6 months. He runs spice. He runs spice to other planets. And it's interesting the way he thinks about running spice, because he doesn't think about it as being illegal. When he talks about running spice, he says to himself that finally instead of being a thief or a beggar or running scams or running frauds, I can do honest work. I'm running spice. So it's interesting to see that how he doesn't view that at this point in time as illegal. It's less illegal to run spice, according to Han, than it is to be a beggar or to be a thief or to run scams on innocent people. And while he's on Elysia, he gets paired up with a bodyguard, someone to watch over him, a Togorian named Murg. So instead of a big dog like Chewbacca, think about a big cat like Murg. He's essentially a cat species, and he's Han's bodyguard. And eventually, they become friends. And eventually, Han finds out that Murg is on Elysia because he's looking for his packmate, his fiancée, essentially, who had come to Elysia. He's trying to find her. Her name is Mrav, and he's trying to find her. And so, as Han is unraveling all of this, he becomes friends with Murg, and he says he's going to help him find his packmate. And while he's there, he also falls in love with Bria Theron. Bria Theron is a pilgrim and a slave who came from an extremely wealthy family on Corellia. She left to make her own way in the world, and instead wound up on Elysia, being addicted to spice and being a slaver, working in the spice factories. Han instantly falls in love with her, becomes enamored with her. This is his first real love interest. And he spends a good portion of the time of the book trying to woo her, trying to befriend her. And then finally, he cooks up this big idea of, well, what we're going to do is we're going to steal a ship from the Talandatil and from the Hutts. We're going to steal a lot of art that they've been hoarding so that I can pawn it later. And then we're all going to escape. We're all going to escape from Elysia. And I'm going to return Merg and help him find Marav and return the two of them back to Tagoria. And then I'm going to bring Bria back to Corellia. And then I'm going to go become a pilot in the academy. And that's Han's plan. And that's essentially what he does. He helps Merg find Marav. He helps Bria break from her spice addiction. He breaks in, steals a bunch of art, steals a ship, and all four of them escape from Elysia. And true to his word, he brings Merg and Marav back to Tagoria, where they're eventually married and live happily ever on their planet. And then now it's just Han and Brea, and he brings Brea back home to Corellia. This is where he finds out that she's wealthy, extremely wealthy. She lives in a mansion. Her parents are loaded. And he sort of feels, awkward being who he is, in being surrounded by that level of richness. And so finally he decides that, he wants to be with Bria. He's in love with her. She admits she's in love with him. And they're going to go off. They're going to go to Coruscant. He's going to cash in all of the art. He's going to sell all the art that he stole, make a bunch of credits, and he's going to apply to the academy. And when he gets to Coruscant, his life essentially falls apart because the Hutts are after him. The Hutts know that he stole the ship. They know all of his aliases. They know all of his contacts. And so when Han finally thinks he's free and clear, he's not, because the Hutts have put a bounty on him. This is the first of many bounties that Han is going to have on his head. And the Hutts have put a bounty on him. They want him back. They want their art back. They want their money back. They want everything back. And so when he tries to cash in or to get his money from selling all of the stolen art, they try to arrest him, and he goes berserk. And he escapes. He escapes from the bounty hunters. He escapes from the security that are after him. He has no money because all of his money now has been locked up. So at the end of the book, Han is broke. He has no money. He has no ship. He has no art. He has nothing to pawn. He has no job. He has nothing. And to pour salt into the wounds, Brea leaves him. She says, I love you, Han, but this life isn't for me. I need something bigger. I need something grander. I need something bolder. And so she sneaks out in the middle of the night. She leaves him some money that she got from her father, but she basically leaves him. So at the end of the story, after Han just trying his hardest to make an honest living of himself, to get away from being a slaver, to get away from being a thief and a scoundrel and one of those people, he finds himself broke. He finds himself without Brea, without Merg or a compatriot or a friend to help. He's got no place to live. He's got no work. He's got no ship. He's got nothing. Shrike does try to come after him at the end of the book, and he gets killed. So at least that's done. But at the end of the book, he's left with nothing. And so we are left with Han going to the Imperial Academy, signing up, going through the entrance exams, and at the end of the book, Han Solo is now going to be a cadet in the Imperial Academy. He goes to Canada, and he starts his training. To be a pilot for the Empire. And that's the first part of his life story, and that's the first part of this trilogy. And it was a really well done trilogy. I think A.C. Crispin really nailed the character of Han Solo, because Han Solo is very complicated. He's not just a smuggler. He's not just a drug runner. He's not just a fraud or a thief. He is complicated. He is someone who was an orphan, doesn't know his family, doesn't know who he is, was raised by slavers, and just wants to be somebody important. He wants to live an honest life. He wants to not be that guy. But every time he tries to not be that guy, that life, that world keeps pulling him back in. Just keeps pulling him back in. Being a scoundrel, being a smuggler, being a spice runner, and then finally being an Imperial pilot. It keeps pulling him back in and pulling him back in. And so finally, at the end of the book, at this point, he accepts who he is. And he says, this is what I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to be. I am going to be an Imperial pilot, and then I will finally be respected. So I think she caught the characterization of Han extremely well. Very, very true to what we see Han being in the movies. An interesting note about Han Solo is that you never see really Han alone. Han is always paired with somebody. This is the Chewbacca effect, right? Because Han and Chewbacca were always an item in the movies. When authors write about Han Solo in books, if Chewbacca's not there, they have to pair him with somebody. So you have Han and Dulana, then you have Han and Merg, and then you'll have Han and Chewbacca, and then later on you'll have Han with other people. So Han can never be alone. He can't be his own. He's never on his own. He's always paired with somebody. And I always found that interesting, because it's almost like they're talking about his character, that if Han Solo isn't paired with somebody to temper his impulses, then he's going to go off and he's going to do some outrageous things, and he's going to get himself in trouble. Which, for the most part, is true. If Han doesn't have somebody there to help temper him, he will run off and get himself in trouble. And so it's interesting to see that Han needs somebody like a Chewbacca to sort of balance himself out, to sort of be the kind of person he wants to be. Because left to his own devices, Han Solo is going to make some choices, and they're not always going to be the best choices in the world. And sometimes bad things are going to happen from those choices. So very, very rarely do you ever see Han alone in the media. And when you do see Han alone, that's when the bad things will happen to him. So that is my review of the Paradise Snare, book 1 of the Han Solo trilogy. I love A.C. Crispin's work. I love her writing. I don't love her reliance on ellipses that are smattered throughout the whole book. I mean, she just can't end a paragraph or a sentence in just a period. She always has to use 3 periods, and it's kind of weird when you see that littered throughout the entire book, that just write a period. Just write 1 period. You don't need to keep a string of them going on. That's one of my only complaints, is that stop doing that. You need 1 singular period. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need to sort of use the 3 period thing all the time after everything. Gets a little jarring after a while. But other than that, I love the book. I love the character of Han. I think she hit his character spot on. I like the character of Brea. I like the character of Merg. There were some really good characters in this book. There were some really good action sequences in this book. It wasn't overly bloated. It was a 3-part story, which was nice. Garrus Shrike, and then Elysia, and then after Elysia, it was really well structured. It was really well written, and it really makes you look forward to the next book. I gave this a 4 on Goodreads. And if you want to read the expanded universe and you want to read stories about some of your original heroes, this is a good place this is a good series to read. This trilogy is a really good series to read if you really like Han and you want to know more about his backstory that was written in the expanded universe. This is a really good story to read. The next book we're going to be reading is book 2 in the Han Solo trilogy, and that's going to be The Hutt Gambit, and that's going to cover a lot of Han's middle years with Lando, with the Falcon, with Chewie, and possibly even Jabba and Boba Fett. So, guys, that is my review of the Paradise Snare. Tell me what you think about it. Did you read it? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are your comments on it? On this book in particular, this trilogy in particular, and maybe the expanded universe in general. And as always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, put some comments down below, share it around, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell those people that are on religious quests but are really just addicted to spice. And until next time, I will see you in the next review.